Good afternoon and welcome to the Absa Business Day Supply Development Dialogue Series. Today, we're going to be speaking about innovation in the supply chain through 4IR. And I'm really excited. I've got some fabulous guests today, starting with Nwako from Solugrowth. And before I get to you, Nwako, just really to contextualize, supply development, as we know, is really critical in unlocking the potential of the economy. And we're facing a reality that intelligent solutions, fourth industrial revolution solutions, innovation is something that we're not only recognizing as coming to us really rapidly, but we're also recognizing as a country that we're a bit on the back foot. And so today I'd really like to stimulate a discussion to say, why is 4IR so important and what has its particular meaning in supply development? So over to you, Nwako. Maybe it's a great opportunity to say Nwako Ramos Ali. She is the head of innovation, and I love this title, head of Millennial Advisory Board. That must mean that you're here for the next century, which is fantastic, at Solugrowth. So I had a look on your website and I found that you're doing amazing things. So I'd just like you, as sponsor of this dialogue, if you just want to tell us just in a quick snapshot, what is it that you do? Why is it important in supply development? And what is it about 4IR that is so important to us?
Thank you so much, Catherine. Greetings to everyone on the call or meeting, conference, whatever we want to call it. As Catherine said, my name is Ramos Ali and I head innovation at Solugrowth. And Solugrowth is essentially a business process solution service. So the end-to-end of whatever solutions a business may need, we are usually there for that. So if you talk HR, we've got a hire to retire solution for businesses. If we talk procure to pay, we've got a solution under that. If you look at data and analytics, if you look at overall digital transformation consulting, we play in that space. So the main purpose of our business is shared services. And I think it's an opportune time to be part of such events because when you look at the supply chain process, all of it from the beginning to the end, you need a shared services of sort for you to try save on time, money, and get the quality that you need in a different and innovative way. So that's the space we play in, Catherine.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much. Nwako, just to touch quickly, 4IR in supply development. Why do you believe it's particularly important in the supply development field?
So, I mean, I think 4IR, if we look at it, it's really the fourth industrial revolution. If you look at the past two revolutions that have been there, technology has sort of always been in the forefront. But I think now we live in a time where it's the most crucial puzzle the most crucial piece to any puzzle that one needs in their business. So if you look at, for example, how the global landscape has addressed the supply chain space. Once upon a time, we used to look at, you have an idea, you have a policy on how you're going to appoint people, and you predict what the outcome would be of the service that you're going to acquire. Now we sit in a time where everything has been so disrupted to a point where you may find that you no longer have to go through the old and the traditional channels to get a service. If you look at globally, we've got things like the gig economy. We have people that we call giggers, who you can now source through the internet, and you can find a chartered accountant who you need for just a month of their services, and you get your work done, and you no longer have to go through a full and complicated tender process, to get those people. So I think that's where we are now.
Thanks. So it's all about disruption. Well, we certainly know about disruption, don't we? We've been baptized. I think virtually everybody in the world has suddenly had this baptism of really understanding what disruption is all about. And as an entrepreneur, I love it because there's always opportunity in change and in crisis. And so let's take that a little bit further. So Suzanne, I'd like to introduce Suzanne Hatting. And so Suzanne particularly has a long experience in post-school education and training, and has been working probably, I would call it an interface between the private sector and government. Suzanne, how important is government's role in this fourth industrial revolution? Do they have a role to play, and what should we be looking to them to supply in this?
I think what is critical is that the systems and processes need to change, especially if you look at it, the 4IR in terms of the skills development system. There's such massive changes in terms of the skills needs, the types of occupations that people will be in, because the 4IR in essence is going to change everything about the way we work, the way we live. And everything that people say about the 4IR is that we're going to need new skills. So if new skills have to be developed, you have to have the systems in place to develop those new skills. And my main concern, and I've been writing quite a lot about that, and my main concern is that the skills development system that we have, especially post-school, is simply not geared towards the fourth industrial revolution. The system is too slow, it's not responsive, it focuses on qualifications, which in 4IR, that kind of world, you actually need a different type of system to train the skills that you need. So I really am concerned that the skills development system that government has in terms of the CETAs, the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, is simply not the right system to train the kind of 4IR skills that we need. And unfortunately, that is the system for training people, for training the current workplace and the future workplace. So that's really my concern. That's the angle that I look at it. And 4IR.
I can't agree with you more, Suzanne. So my experience of government, the government training institutions are that they are just moribund, and they don't seem to have realized that they've hit a crisis. They don't seem to have acknowledged that. And so I think you're right, systems need to change. Personally, I don't have faith in the government being able to change, certainly government systems to be able to change fast enough. And so for me, I think it's really important to look at private education institutions being able to do that. And so I'm really pleased that we've got Ridwan Aswat on the line here, because Ridwan, you head up the business development and operations at Regent Business School. So my understanding would be is that as a private institution, you are able to be more agile. And so 4IR is something that you can take on board and respond to very quickly. Would that be right?
No, thanks, Catherine. I think that's perfectly in order, and it's very interesting what Suzanne says, particularly with regards to what she says about the skills development and the likes. And I must share a few thoughts on that, because I think firstly, when you look at the changing labor market and the labor force, and it's interesting what Gwako says as well, the whole issue of the traditional work environment has changed tremendously over the last few days or last few months as we know it. The whole issue of remote learning, the whole issue of digitization, automation. Today, you want to buy anything, you just go online and Bob's your uncle and you get it delivered to your house. So, it has changed tremendously the way we have to do business, the way we have to think about things, and the impact the 4IR has had is tremendous. And I don't think it's something new. I think it's been evolving over time. But I think we're seeing the rapid development of that. And just to give you just a quick stat, they say that by 2030, we will have over 375 million workers who will have to change their jobs. And we're seeing it, we're seeing it every day. The jobs that we spoke about and people who are in jobs for life are no more. We're going to suddenly have jobs like data strategists, which are already coming about, robot coordinators, cloud technologists, all of those kinds of things. Where are we going to find these people? How are we going to find them? Where are we going to get them? And the second aspect of it is that, a lot of companies, a lot of academic programs teach a lot of the academic stuff, but I think a lot of it would need to be done hands-on, practical skills, demonstration, and the likes. So I think that rapidly is going to change the dynamic within the labor force or the workforce throughout the world as we move along. And I think it's a great opportunity for Africa as well. I mean, just to give you the youth dividend in Africa, 50%, over 50% are below the age of 25. I mean, you look at what's happening in the rest of the world. How do we, and that's the challenge for us, is how do we as institutions, as organizations, as companies and corporates, able to embrace that change and develop for that future? And I think Regions is what is looking at.
Yeah, that's the question. Absolutely. Lovely. Thanks, Ridwan. Really nice input. Yeah, I'd like to maybe just then move on to Emma Kay. So Emma Kay, I just love that you're a digital revolutionary, and maybe you can tell us what a digital revolutionary does. It sounds like you're fighting something very important. Your particular interest is in townships and the sense that the township economy is so important. But when we talk 4IR, have they been left out of the loop? What's your opinion on kind of including or harnessing the value of townships from a 4IR perspective? Your Micah?
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for the reminder about the mic, and it's great to be invited into your forum. So thank you for the invitation. Yes, the 4IR, I mean, I think the perfect place to start is let's see what the 4IR is, Fourth Industrial Revolution. And, you know, the first industrial revolution was steam, then electricity, then communication, and the fourth industrial revolution is biological, communication, and a blend of all the above. So let's be frank, in terms of South Africa, we vacillate between the second industrial revolution of no electricity and the fourth industrial revolution. So, you know, we hear at our latest sonar, you know, a new smart city being proposed in Lanseria. But the question really remains is, why are we not talking about smart townships? If we don't enable townships to be smart, then the bulk of our growing population are never going to be part of any fourth industrial revolution. So we can talk ad nauseum at a corporate level around supply chains, around embracing new kind of future jobs. But at the end of the day, if we don't enable the township economy to be part of the fourth industrial revolution, then the digital divide, as we know it, is just going to get bigger and bigger. And COVID has definitely kicked a wedge into inequality by the lack of access to affordable data, number one. Number two, very critically, digital skills. What does it look like to get on the internet? How do I engage with the internet? Very basic things that are critical for any inclusion into an economy. So I think the elephant in the room is really around how do we look at embracing townships into our conversations in a meaningful way, and not paying lip service to kind of BE conversations or enterprise development conversations, but really in a powerful, impactful way. At the end of the day, 72% of our population actually spend money in the townships. That's the 72% is where people spend their money. And the informal economy is worth 164 billion rand. So how do we start bringing that into these conversations? And so I think it's wonderful to be able to start talking about that in a conversation like you have now.
Nice, great. Okay, fighting talk there, Emma Kay. Let's come back to that one. Lovely input. Thank you. Yeah, so look, we've got such an interesting mix in the room. You know, we've got from Solugrowth, Nwako, who really speaks from a corporate perspective and providing solutions at a big business end. Through Suzanne, who's Suzanne Hatting, who's really trying to force change through the government systems so that we get the right educational processes so that we can really move forward as a nation. And then Ridwan Aswat from private education, who is at least in a position where they can be more agile. And Emma Kay really speaking very hard, you know, very kind of nitty gritty to say that there's this huge proportion of the country that's sitting in the township for whom just simple education and opportunity is often lacking, let alone when we start talking 4IR. Nwako, I'd really like to maybe just then ask you, kind of as Solugrowth providing skills and solutions to big business, What do you think? What do you think are the steps as a corporate? So we're here really talking about how do we use supply development in order to stimulate the economy, in order to create opportunities for growth and competitiveness. What do you think is the most important thing that then corporates need to be doing for their supply chains in this conversation?
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. I think on the basis of the conversation, the three important words are skills, skills, and more skills. I think if you look at the education spectrum, it's been something that's been there from the very first Industrial Revolution. I think it'll be there in decades and centuries to come. In a practical way, what we do at Solid Growth is we've got something called RUR, which stands for reskill, upskill, and redeploy, where we're saying we can't afford to keep bringing in new people into the organization for whatever skill that we may need to service the market that we service. So we'd rather than take the very people who are within the organization, reskill them, upskill them, or rather redeploy them into something else that they can specialize in. I think if you look at companies like Amazon, IBM, Google recently has also just launched their academy. They allow for you to learn new skills like data and analytics, automation, machine learning, online in a short space of time. You don't need more than 6 months to get the right skills of the softwares and the platforms that they've developed that all corporate business and government uses anyway. So I think the beauty about 4IR is that it has sort of made it easier for us to access the skills that were once solely designed for developed countries. Now, as a developing country, we're able to then participate and compete in global markets. And I think we see it with our own selves. We service companies in both the United States and in Europe, and with skills from people who actually live in townships and work for us here in South Africa. So I think the playing field has been leveled slightly thanks to technology.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I think, so what I'm experiencing around me is that this crisis, this kind of COVID crisis has been it's been a blessing because it's forced people, there was no option but to change. So people that previously would have really resisted moving into Zoom, moving into kind of digital communications, even considering it, just had to do it. And it's been an education for us all that it just takes a change of mindset. And so I think that's really useful. So from a retraining point of view, this has been an example. You just have to think it and then you have to do it. The time for talking and for planning is over. Now's the time for doing. So lovely. Thank you for that. Speaking to you then, Suzanne, I think kind of my frustration is that government does have such a critical role to play. How do we get them to move faster? Is it possible?
It's quite difficult because I've also been engaged in forums with Department of Higher Education and Training. And I think I don't even know where to start. Here, I don't know where to start. Because I think it's not just about changing the system, it's changing the underlying assumptions. And many of the assumptions in our skills development system are firstly, that you need a qualification. Our national qualifications framework is about qualifications. And I'm not saying qualifications are important, but I also do qualification development for universities, for example. It takes you from the time that you design and conceptualize a qualification, it takes you probably about 2 years before it's registered and accredited and all of that stuff. Then it takes you 4 years to go through the qualification. By the time you graduate, it's 6-7 years after the qualification was designed. Yes. So unfortunately, in 4IR kind of work environment, what you need is sort of just-in-time kind of training, the kind of thing that you think on the run. You think we actually need this kind of skill. Let us develop it now. If you look at the kinds of skills, I mean, it's interesting the kinds of skills that they say we're going to need. Things like computational thinking, transdisciplinarity, cognitive load development. We don't even know what those things mean. And there's no way in the national qualification system, in the formal system, that you're going to get some kind of credit-bearing program. And this, I almost want to call it a national sickness, national obsession that we have with credits. And again, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with the national qualifications framework. It has a specific place. But unfortunately, at this stage, as a nation, we think that only training that gives you credits on the National Qualifications Framework is worth anything. Unfortunately, most of the kind of training that you're going to need to cope for 4IR, whether you are employed or, as you would say, the reskilling people or skilling new people, is not going to be the kind of training that you can actually fit into this neat little box of a unit standard or a qualification on the National Qualifications Framework. And in my discussions that I've had in forums with the Department of Education, they all talk about, yes, they are compatible and they're moving to 4IR, but when you look at the basic assumptions of the system, they are miles away from that, because our whole system, our funding system, the BEE, all of that is based on this notion that qualifications and credits on the National Qualifications Framework. Yeah. And until we break that, so one thing, for example, that I've been arguing strongly is for professional bodies, because I think it's professional bodies like the Engineering Council and the Medical Council, all those professional bodies. I think there are probably about 100 professional bodies in South Africa at the moment that are registered with SAQA. If you can get the professional bodies to recognize those kinds of skills, then we have a hope. But there's no way that the kind of skills that we need for a productive workplace in 4IR, you're not going to get those through credit-bearing programs, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. I mean, as an employer myself, one of the huge frustrations is that people are getting qualifications, they're getting degrees, they're spending a lot of time and money and energy getting degrees that are not employable. They don't meet my needs. And I think that there's too much of that. And one of the big challenges, as you've said, is how do you move quickly? We just said in the last 4 months, we've completely turned everything around. In 4 months, the world has changed. The whole world has changed in 4 months. And now you're saying, as rightly, that it can be 8 years, 8 years down the road that people will get the necessary qualification to make the change that we've made in the last 4 months. I think you've really hit the nail on the head. So maybe just going to Ridwan then. Ridwan, I've actually, so my question to you, a question just came through from one of the viewers. The question is, how can government get involved in improving South Africa's readiness for 4IR? So I'm going to turn it around and say to you as a private institution, what would you like government, what do you believe government could be doing better that would enable you to serve your client base better? What is your relationship with government?
I think that's an interesting question, Catherine. I mean, that's always a struggle within any regulatory environment in terms of trying to find the right mix. And Suzanne picked on it quite nicely. Just to give you a sense of technology, I think we're probably about 20 to 25 or 30 years behind the rest of the world. But the pandemic has speeded us up to such an extent that we have to play almost catch up, or rather play, as Wako says, was leveling the playing field. So I think there is definitely, we can tell you from a private higher education perspective, there suddenly has been a change of mindset from the regulator, from government. I think initially it was the political will. We're beginning to see that change. I think there's now a push to do something different. I think the issue that, and I think that will come over time. Like any revolution that has taken place, or any industrial revolution for that matter, there's always a lag period of about 20 to 30 years before finally everything settles down and then the next one comes. So we anticipate that we've moved very, very quickly in terms of that. I think government definitely will play a role in terms of pushing that agenda, and they've started in some way or the other. I think it will move further. But I want to touch on two other things that we mentioned earlier. For example, the millennials that you talk about, and Wako, I mean, your organization, or rather your portfolio. I mean, today with the whole issue of cobots, there's a whole concept of cobots where you would not need so much of human interaction. These robots would probably be sitting next to you and trying to figure out a lot of things with you, but you still need the human interaction. But the millennials are such, they don't want to spend hours on end trying to slave themselves at a work desk. They want to do things quick and move on. And Catherine, interestingly, from a business or entrepreneurship point of view, they want to come and deliver their skills, get paid, and move on whatever else they want. They're not interested in spending 20, 30 years with you. And that's where the 4IR comes in, because if we begin to teach the robotics and the automation, and we have mundane or regular tasks that can be automized and automated, the rest of it, we can then bring the service as we wish. But there's another interesting thing that has happened within this 4IR space, and the pandemic has just pushed it forward, is what they call anti-fragile entrepreneurship or behavior. It's a concept where a typical business would plan something, and they'll staff it, and then they'll execute, that's your typical process. But where we find ourselves now is where companies are forced to execute immediately, or else they lose business, they lose market share, they lose customers. And that's where the innovation comes, and then it's staffing, and then it's planning. And again, the 4IR has brought such wonderful benefit to the business world in that you can get a product almost personalized to you in whatever way, form that you want. You take Nike, for example, you can probably get a tacky, it hasn't come to South Africa yet, but at some point in time. Just the interesting thing, just the other day, yesterday, I've heard that Uber is now going into the delivery service. It makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense. There's a concept called synchromodality. It's a very interesting concept where we bring in we've got transport systems and supply chain systems that are all over the world. But how do we maximize? And the whole concept of the Internet of Things is now being transferred, that concept, into the world of business. So how do I use what I want immediately and get onto it? We have the typical problem when we bring containers in from the rest of the world. You've got to have a 40-foot and a 20-foot, and you can't have, bits and pieces in it, and you got to pay. Now there's a move where they're saying, okay, so you only need two boxes of 20 centimeters. Why do you need a 20-foot container? How can we work with other things? And the machine learning, the AI, understand that and get it.
Thanks, Ridwan. No, you're blowing my brain now. You're giving us too many things here to think about. But I love some of those concepts. I'm going to replay this and make a note of some of those new concepts you brought through. I think,
Catherine, sorry, man, I must apologize. I'm going to be bailing out in the next few minutes, but I want to just share 30 seconds, please, if you don't mind. Regent Business School has adopted those two concepts in the real way possible. We've set up two things. One, we've, in the last 2 years, this is our third year going, we set up an iLead lab that does exactly what's that, teaching the robotics, teaching the coding and the likes, and making people real. The second one, which we launched actually in the pandemic, is what we call the Regent Entrepreneurship Hub, that will teach the skills in iLead. The entrepreneurship wing will now become into a viable business. So, you know what, we're ready to share with the rest of whoever is listening out. Thanks, Catherine.
Nice, thanks, Ridwan. Really nice input. I think as you were speaking, the thing is very obvious is that this is the time for small business, because the agility and the ability to move fast is not something that large businesses, it's not their competency, it is the competency of small businesses. And so this becomes a very exciting time. And that's why these relationships between large corporates and small suppliers are so important, because often this agility and this rapid response come from the small suppliers, and they can feed it up to the big guys. Lovely, nice input. Thanks, Ridwan. So Ridwan, I think you're about to leave us, so I'm going to greet you and say thank you very much for your contribution. So thanks for that. So moving on to you, Emma Kay, I've actually got a question come through, and the question is, how can we help employees develop the skills they need to thrive in the future workplace and seize new careers? And I want you to maybe particularly focus this on your own area of interest. So what does this actually mean from a township point of view? What is it? So if a lot of people are talking about township economies, they're talking about kind of seeding the township economy, there's a lot of talk about it. What do you believe are the practical things that corporates need to be doing in order to be able to make that happen in the township? Mike. Great.
Sorry, Trevor had muted me. I hadn't realized. So that's a very big question, Catherine, and it's a relevant one. So I'm going to turn that around a little bit in that I'm not sure I can answer from a perspective of how do you equip employees within a corporate structure. I'm going to rather look at the informal market who are not necessarily employees, and how do we bring them into an economy, which is typically, so there's a very interesting company called Money for Jam, and they're a great example that use technology. So in other words, embracing 4IR with technology into the township economy. So they work specifically with the gig economy and micro jobbing. So a real life example is they work closely with the mining industry, and the mining industry have their own procurement policies and their own supply chains, which are fairly watertight because of regulations and legislation. Yet there is a need to start embracing communities around them and the kind of the informal markets around them. So how do they start using those individuals in their procurement policy? So what they've done is they've embraced technology, and they then use technology to understand the communities around them, and then start to populate potential jobs into the community. So for example, car washing. So some of their big trucks need car washing, particularly with their brake pads, etc. Typically that was done within the mine, and now they can outsource it to community. So the job goes out to community in terms of the available people to clean and wash their trucks. But the critical thing is skilling those individuals as to how to wash the brake pads in a truck. So it's not a normal car system. So through the platform, individuals are trained. It's all geolocated. It is carefully monitored. You get trained to do that specific job. It then gets outsourced to the community. It gets evaluated by the supervisor. And then most importantly, payment, which is typically the problem within large corporates, is that the payment is then made through the platform, and that community member is paid either immediately or within 7 days, unlike the kind of a 60 or 100-day process of most corporates. So it's about how do we re-engineer our thinking to embrace, from a corporate perspective, how do we start to work with the township economy into our supply chains and into our procurement policies? And to your point, is like there is a disruption, and particularly in the last 4 months, we've had to relook at different systems because those systems haven't been working. How do we look at embracing technology to marry the corporate world to the township economy and start to employ those individuals into our system? So I'm not sure, I haven't been particularly eloquent in answering the question, but I think it's more around how do we change that question, because that's a very, it's a well kind of versed question that we've been asking for so long. And I think the question needs to be slightly different, of how do we work with the township economy into our corporate structures using technology?
Yeah, thanks, McKay. I mean, I think that is a really lovely example. So effectively engaging people who are not 4IR trained. So exactly. They're doing fairly low skill, in this case, manual work, doing the washing of the brake pads, but using the innovative technology as the interface. So the corporate has comfort because they're kind of doing business as usual with the platform, and then the platform itself is enabling people that maybe are not otherwise skilled in order to get work. I think it's a really nice example, and I'd be interested to see maybe just a very quick follow-up question to you is: do you see that this type of a model could be replicated in other industries? Do you see it as having quite a broad reach, other than the one that the example you've used?
Yes, I mean, so just to kind of you summarized it so beautifully, is that, you know, this question around 4IR, how do we skill people, and that may not necessarily be the answer. I think one of the answers, not the answer, one of the answers is embracing technology to bring and bridge that divide. So bring unskilled or not adequately skilled people into 4IR using technology. So I think you've summarized that. To answer your question around another example, which is a really beautiful example around the spaza shops. So using technology, what's then has been deployed is, as opposed to big warehousing of fast moving consumer goods, and then basically then getting from a big warehouse into a spaza shop is it's using micro warehousing. So, for example, in a township, there may be you have an additional room that you would like to employ as a micro warehouse. You then get that you become the micro warehouse in the township, which then supplies the spaza shop. So it changes the supply chain quite drastically, and it keeps money in the township. So it's less of an extractive economy and more of an inclusive one. So how do we start embracing the last mile more effectively using technology?
I love it. Thanks, Emeke. I mean, one of my kind of passions, one of the drums I beat is how do we keep money circulating in the local economies? There's far too high a portion of our money just goes straight out to the malls and to the major retailers and to the shareholders, and not enough circulation from business to business. And without the circulation, we'll never create wealth. So thank you very much for that input.
Can I just put a full stop to that? Sorry, Catherine, to interrupt you. Is that part of that circular economy within the township is, for example, the amapellas, or otherwise known as the cockroaches, which are the local taxis within communities. So in other words, I arrive at my taxi with all my groceries and I've still got to go up the hill to my house or my shack. I will get an amapella. So in the downtimes, those amapellas can be the delivery system from the mini warehouse to the spaza shops. So it's really around how we look at the circular economy using technology. And that's the interesting part about 4IR in this conversation. It's not necessarily about the skilling of people into a robotics environment, using technology.
Great. No, I think that's great. I think the point is well made. Thanks, Emeke. Excellent. I've actually got a question here, and I don't know who, I'm not quite sure. I think I really did throw you a little bit under the bus, Suzanne, the last time, so I'm going to be maybe a little kind here. I have a question, though, and it's come up, investment in rural areas. So it's basically digital networks in rural areas are almost non-existent. What do we believe we can do to invigorate government programs to provide sufficient network data into the rural areas? I'm actually going to throw it to you, Nwako, because I think that maybe in the interface where you're in, what's your feeling on this? How do we go forward without proper investment in networks?
Sure. I think some good work has been done over the years. In my other life, I run a nonprofit, and some of the work we've been doing with your telecoms has been running coding skills in rural areas. And I think why it was important for us to partner with a network company is for them to continuously see where the issues are when it comes to connectivity. Yep. How do they improve it quickly, and how do we take it, throughout the country? And I think some work is being done. It's quite slow, but fiber is being rolled out. I think we're doing quite better than most African countries, but we're still behind compared to the more developed countries. But I think the important one is getting the right network set up in the rural areas. Also then the right resources. When we talk, if you give a child a laptop, you can distribute 200,000 laptops with the amount of money you can spend building one library. So I think then you can expand the mind of a learner, because I think you'll see there's one of those kids, one of the teenagers who developed an app in the US that was tracking the COVID statistics, was 16 years old, and he learned coding through YouTube. He didn't go to any formal school to do that, and now it's one of the most contested apps that everyone wants to buy. So I think if you give the right people the right tools, or if you give a broader spectrum of people the right tools, we can definitely go far. Just one quick last example, one of the robotics programs we were running in Soweto 2 years ago, we were doing it with 11-year-olds, and one of the 11-year-olds then said, if we can help him build a drone, then he can support the grandmothers in the township that can't go and get their own medicine from the local clinics. And I think when we see 11-year-olds not knowing how much investment is required, but has a vision for solving a problem in the community, changes, how we should quickly move in terms of investing in the right networks and resources for the rural areas and townships.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that story really speaks to my heart, and I do think that maybe in South Africa we need to be better at collaborating, working together to solve these things. So, I mean, if we look at the stuck nature of the economy right now, one of the clear unlockers is providing internet access at a really high rate to everybody. And maybe this is not just a thing of saying, you should be doing it or you should be doing it, but what we should be doing is creating collective investment so that we make that happen. I'm just we've run out of time, so maybe just a last opportunity to go around and give some input. And maybe I'm going to ask you, Suzanne, a question has come through. It really seems to speak directly to you. So I'm going to invite you that you might want to include this answer in your wrap up. The question is, how do we enhance TVET education and increase TVET entrepreneurship? So I don't know if you want to answer that one, or if I've thrown you under the bus again, I apologize. But maybe that seems to be speaking to you. So if you want to just embrace that as your winding up question.
I will talk about TVET, but I'm going to go around because I want to link up with what Emma has also said. And that is that I think we need to get away from the concept that we need to prepare people formally for an occupation. If you look at the gig economy that somebody mentioned earlier, we are all going to in a different economy. And I think this is I think what we need to realize is that 4IR is a new world. It's a new world of work. It's a new world it's a totally new environment. So we cannot use the old system for the new environment. TVET colleges are wonderful, but they were developed for the old world, not for the new world. So there is a place for people who want formal qualifications. But if you really want to prepare yourself for a job, you need to understand that before you are 40 years old, you're probably going to have 15 different jobs. Our TVET system and our educational system is geared to train you for an occupation for the rest of your life. That is an old paradigm. So what we actually need to instill in young people, and I see this is what you're doing with the young people in the townships, is to find alternative ways of educating themselves. We've got MOOCs, massive open online courses. You can now study anything that you want to study for free on the internet. So yes, internet connectivity is very important. So unfortunately, the TVET colleges are also in this mindset of preparing somebody to be a plumber, to be an HR admin person. That's going to be fine, but you are only probably going to be an HR admin person if you do find a job, because remember, the unemployment, I think the unemployment, the throughput for FET colleges is actually quite low. It's about 30%. So only 30% of the people who enter TVET college finish actually their qualification. And of those people, probably only about 20% of the people with the TVET college actually find employment. So we need to seriously look at this whole concept of graduate unemployment from the TVET colleges and the universities, because we have those statistics that show us that the people who are going through that system actually don't end up in the workplace, and really shift our mind and saying, well, if you really want to be productive in the workplace, what alternatives are there? And my problem with the government system and with the TVET and the CETA system, all of those systems, is that they keep going back to the formal way of doing things, where we actually need a complete mind shift about how do you train people for the future workplace. And until we break that mindset, we are not going to get the TVET colleges or the government or the CETAs or any of the post-school system to actually prepare people for the new world of work. We are preparing people for a world of work that existed 20, 30 years ago, not the world of work that we're entering at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Suzanne. I have to absolutely agree with you. And I think it actually starts way before TVET. I think that it's a change of mindset in the style of education, that education is no longer should be linear. We need to be giving people critical thinking skills and the ability to be agile and innovative. And it's almost as though our very old-fashioned, very paternalistic education system beats that out of you from grade one. So yeah, for me, for this new world, we need a whole different style of thinking that comes almost all the way from ECD. I'm going to end with you, Ngako. So maybe I just go to Emma Kay, just a last thought, just a kind of roundup of your thinking, maybe just the last word that you want to leave us with.
I would love people to think very hard about enabling smart townships to really accelerate this conversation, which is basically deals directly to your point around affordable connectivity into townships that's not reliant on government, embracing digital skills that are relevant to those communities. Those are the two core pillars to really move the needle in this conversation.
Lovely. Thanks so much for that. And that for me is really relevant to this conversation, because the whole thing with the Absa Business Day Supply Development Awards is that they're there to not only acknowledge best practice and to share kind of learnings and to kind of raise the bar for everybody, but there's so much about collaboration. And one of the beautiful things that has come out of these awards in the last 3 years is how industry collaboration is becoming more of a norm. And so when we just speak about this, it becomes so obvious to me that this area is one where corporates should be putting heads together in order to solve things such as internet access into the townships, where we all know that we need to be stimulating opportunities. So thanks for that, Emeka. So the last word to you, Nwako. What would you like to leave us with? What is it that you'd like to say to end up?
Sure. I think for me, just 3 things quickly. One is that we need to start implementing what we call design thinking. I encourage everyone who's watching this to just go through YouTube and experience what design thinking means and the process of it. 2, let's start leading from the front as South Africa, because I think if you look at some of the statistics and the reports from Accenture, our banks are leading globally when it comes to digitization and cybersecurity. So if we continue in the light, I think we can lead with many other industries. And lastly, I just want to encourage everyone to innovate, because it's the only way it can get us to be in the forefront of a lot of things that we want to achieve as a nation and as a people. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Wow, what a wonderful wrap up. Thank you so much, Nwako. And I've really enjoyed this session. I think we've had the most fantastic guests. I thank you for being here. And I really think that we've crystallized exactly what these Absa Business Day Supply Development Awards are all about. And so I look forward to invite all of you to please attend the awards themselves. It'll be next week on the 9th of September. Thank you so much to the guests. It's been a fabulous session. I've really loved it, and I've loved speaking to you. Thank you so much.